Hello everyone, Yasin here. Welcome to the fourth episode of How It's Mixed, and today we're gonna talk about how I mixed this. Before starting, I want to talk about two small points. First one, I will include the guitar tones from now on, and I will do my best to give all the details about how I am setting, dialing these tones. And the second one, I will do my best to speak a little bit faster because one of my friends told me that I am speaking very slow, and because of that, the videos are too long and it is kind of unbearable to, listen to me slowly. So sometimes 2x is much better, faster. And actually it's not faster because I'm talking slow and 2x makes me kind of speaking normal. Anyway, since English is my second language, I will probably make a lot of mistakes, but after this video, including this one of course, I will try to speak a little bit faster. If I make any mistakes, I'm sorry. And if you have any questions or you didn't understand because I couldn't talk well, just let me know in the comment section and I will do my best to answer you. That being said, let's start. What? 68% of you didn't subscribe yet? Guys, come on. Subscribe, turn on notification bell. Let's make djent great again, or just make great. I don't know. You do that? Subscribe and turn on the notification bell, and let's continue to the video. We're gonna talk about master bass and mix bass first. We will continue with instrument bass, and after that I will start drums, bass, guitars, layers, meaning clean, ambient and lead guitars, and after that FX. That's gonna be the order like the previous videos. And I'm not gonna do single ABs now. I will just turn off all the plugins in that particular bus and I will enable them one by one. Hopefully this screen recording will show you what am I enabling or disabling. Thanks to Connor Kaminsky helping me on getting a better quality, higher quality screen recording. Now I can show you and provide you a little bit more context and resolution. Let's start with the limiter. This is flatline 2 and I set it in a hybrid mode, which I'm always using now, and it is much easier for me to set this thing instead of ozone. For some reason I achieved much better loudness levels. Don't check the numbers there, I think it's minus 10.4 or something like that at the moment. And what I did is just set the oversampling, set the threshold according to what I want, check the color, it's 7% at the moment, and I didn't even touch the ceiling here. And I am pretty happy with whatever the default value was here, which is surprising. The second one is ozone. I'm not gonna lie, I'm not the best mastering guy, of course. So for that reason I used mastering assistant and I removed the limiter from there. The first part is always the equalizer, and if there is any big movement here like 1.5, 2 point something reduction or increase in certain area, I go back to the mix. I of course disable this one and I will check the mix again, especially that certain area. You can just put some EQ on your master bass and isolate this area and try to understand what's going on. That could be a nice tip. But on this one I didn't check anything here in the 32 Hertz because for some reason I didn't need to. For this mix I did it like 60% on the monitors, Kali LP2s, LP6 version 2s, and rest of the times I use this one and my AirPod. And in this setting I didn't feel anything bad, so I just left it as it is. But usually if it's something after 60, 100 Hertz, I definitely do that. And these are not big moves and I appreciate what they are doing. The next one is dynamics, and with the dynamics it was taming the low end only. but I also added these parts and I clicked the learn. After that, I didn't touch anything. It's just taming very small amount, and I'm happy with the result. The next one is dynamic EQ. With the mastering assistant, I never touch this area. There's a certain curve that Ozone, I think AudioLens does that, gives you how popular music sounds and which EQ curve it does have, and I think it's trying to match that both with dynamic EQ and the equalizer, and that's why I'm not touching it too much. If there's a big movement, I'm just working on that. And this exciter is something I added. It's normally not adding it by itself, and I really wanted to excite it, saturate it of course, a little bit, and it actually paid off really well. Most of the times my mixes are very dark and I want to brighten it up, and we're gonna see that in the next plugins, and it was pretty beneficial. So if you have the Ozone suite, definitely check the exciter. If you don't have that, you can use alternative methods. You can load a couple of saturators, set the mix like 5 to 6% in the mix or wet level, and after that you can just work on your saturation a little bit, and of course after that just dial more wet sound or just duck that a little bit, and that's what Ozone does. The next one is Soothe, and what we have is just a preset. It's balanced to the Grammy Awards. I am always using this. I never change the parameters. It smoothens and sweetens, I'm saying, the whole mix, and I really like what it does. Sometimes I change this depth value, not always. I think I need to check that a little bit because I'm thinking that this preset can be more beneficial, especially certain cases where I go really harsh. I can use this plugin on the master bus a little bit more efficiently. And the next one is Gullfoss Master. Gullfoss plugins, we're gonna also check the mix one in a second. It listens to your last mix or master. In this case, it's gonna be the mix. And after that, you can set parameters like recover and tame. Recover to push it up, tame to push it down. You can put some bias. I am kind of unable to explain this. I think it's like an error rate here. And I also kind of always, since my mixes are dark, I brighten it up. I always brighten it up, but for some cases, if you have a very different production technique, mixing technique, maybe you will go too bright or you won't be able to tame too much of your overheads and you may need to darken it a little bit. But Gullfoss is a magic. I accept it as a magic, and after that I am just setting the parameters. I listen, I do the A/B, and if I'm happy, I kind of stick with it. And let's listen certain section. Let's do it with riff 1, okay? And what I'm going to do is to disable all of them except the limiter, because if I turn off the limiter, we don't have kind of bypass feature with the flatline. For that reason, the overall loudness will drop a lot, and I don't want to have that in the video. For that reason, I have that as enabled all the time. And while we are checking the whole mix, elements one by one, it's gonna be always on, and the rest of the area is always on. This is top-down mixing, actually, especially with considering the instrument bus, which we will talk about. These plugins will always be open, because if I disable all of them, the mix will crash down. They are very important for the drums, for the guitars, and so on. Let's do the A/B one by one. very big difference, especially with the ozone. Sooth just smoothens it out, and Gullfoss opens up the mix very subtle. You're gonna see the big change because we are talking about the mix bus now. We have only two plugins here. I can't even open them side by side. The first one is the virtual mix rack, and I am just using mix bus punch as a preset here, and I am setting the parameters according to what I'm hearing. And I think I changed the EQ a little bit and these values, and I also probably changed. I'm not quite sure about the type. Maybe I also changed this one. And I remember also changing the drive here. That is all. I didn't do anything else. So you can just load this. If you have the slate, you can just put the VMR, and after that put the preset, and after that just check out. And after that, in the order, we have the Gullfoss mix. Nothing is playing, so don't check these visuals now. But wrong plugin. Gullfoss mix is maybe the biggest change. Even if I just, completely turn off Gullfoss master, Gullfoss mix does the biggest change, because usually you're setting the values very low on the Gullfoss master. You don't want any big changes in your master bus. It means that there's a problem in the mix. For that reason, I set this one to 28% on recover and 21 on tame. I think it's fair. I also brighten up the mix here, and I think this one is doing the biggest change, which you're gonna hear and judge now. Let's close this and disable these. Let's start. I hear the change in the guitar tone, especially in the kick and overheads, the whole cymbals. And I think it's actually brightened the whole mix up. And I really, really like this one. I mean, I never leave Gullfoss mix and master or Sooth out. It's always on the mix bus and master bus, and I always keep them on. It doesn't matter if I have a very dynamic project or just, crushing hard djent. It's always there, and it's helping a ton, I think. The next one is instrument bus. And with the instrument bus, we have gray and red compressors, and it is completely nollie settings. So I have no shame. I love nollie, to the top. And as a number one fan, I watched countless times his videos, and these settings are from him, so you can just copy because I did the same. But what you need to care about, I'm kind of quoting here. For the gray, I am looking for 4 decibels of compression. It's mostly for snare and drum gluing, I should say, especially snare. That's why sometimes I crank the snare and I do the reduction and the gluing here. And for the red, you're aiming for 1 decibels of reduction, and they are basically gluing the whole mix. And I also suggest, because I did some experimentation and I really liked it, this aggressive and glue settings. If I start the whole process, the whole gluing process, I should say, from here, usually I come up to a very pleasant result. So for that reason, I totally recommend that. And I totally recommend the whole Slate Digital bundle. I am using this for the last 5 years, if not more, and I'm pretty happy. And this is also, this gray and red combination is always on my instrument bus. I kind of lied. It was on the mix bus in the first section, but now I am sending orchestral stuff, vocal stuff, and effects to mix bus, so they are not compressed by this gray and red. This is kind of a big change for me after seeing that from Conor Kaminsky. And for that reason, I did this separation and moved these guys to the instrument bus. And yeah, I'm pretty happy with the result. Of course, you need to hear the changes. I disabled both. Let's hear it. The first one just tames the snare down without any question. And the second one is actually, I hear more low end. I hear the glue, and I'm really happy with the result. So let's go to the very first bus you can see here, which is the drum bus. So let's speak about the whole thing first. I mean, the whole kit. I am using Wildfire Full Turbo preset on P5, and as you can kind of see, I don't have too much processing here, and that's actually the reason, because Nolly did all the job and I basically changed some stuff a little bit, and I have no shame for this. And usually I do this with the demos. I was doing ground up mixing, including drums, for a long time, and I changed to this one because it is too much time consuming, and these results that I'm getting with the turbo, it's amazing. I really like how it turned out with this demo and the previous demos. So for that reason, I'm also kind of supporting using this turbo presets if you are making demo. But if you use it too much, you're gonna sound like everyone else. This is kind of a risk. If you don't want that, you can just kind of do what I do. I'm doing Franken kits. Actually, the night before I released this demo, what I had in the snare was not from this kit. It was from One Kit Wonder Brutal and One Kit Wonder Metal. I just combined them and I used them that way, but I didn't want that. I thought that this snare is much better compared to that combination, so I just left it as it is. And I remember also changing the envelope in the toms, and because of one simple thing, I don't like toms ringing out. That's why I think One Kit Wonder Brutal is definitely for me. But on this one, since I like the kit really too much, I just changed the envelope here and I got a much better result. So let's start with this small thingy. This is another Nolly preset. This is, I just named it differently, but it says Instrumental Bus Magic. This setup was in the Instrumental Bus, but it is changed. Nolly changed it to Drum Bus. And after that, I added, definitely after seeing that from him, I put that this distressor in the beginning to do the parallel compression. I know that is actually some sort of compression in the original kit's turbo as well, but I want to push it a little bit more, and the mix level is 25%. So you can just take whatever you want. And with the snare, I am aiming 12 decibels of reduction. And I remember either I pushed it a little bit too much with the gain plugin, or I left it as it is. So actually, let's hear it. Since this is a completely individual bus, I think we should do an A/B for this. It's day and night. There's also a loudness difference, so just think about that. And let's talk about the individual elements. I will start with the kick. So we have first, which is kind of surprising, oxide tape. I am putting and using this tape. This is from UAD, Universal Audio, I should say. And IPS value is 7.5, and I didn't change anything else. I just leveled them, and that was all. Lower the IPS, better and bigger your low end will be. For that reason, I am using this. Before that, I was using virtual tape machines. I changed to this one because of the lower IPS value, and I also wanted some tonal character change, color change, I should say. And the next one is Soothe. This Soothe is one of my presets that I am using almost always. What I do with kick and bass guitar is that in the first areas, like this is 126, I think before 70 or before 75, bass is listening kick and creating space. And after that, 126, as you just saw, and my peak is 237, my kick is listening to bass and ducking certain area whenever bass plays something and we have some present note there. And this is how I usually work. I use Soothe extensively. I mean, this is probably the only plugin that I got much more than I paid for. And for that reason, I love Soothe. I always use it. And I have these kind of presets, like 5 to 6. We're gonna talk about them pretty soon. And I love it. And the next one is Fresh Air. This is a free plugin, just download it. It has to be with you whenever you are mixing. Fresh Air is doing some air. I don't know where mid air starts or high air starts. Probably mid air is after 10K and high air is after 15 or 16K. And I used this on kick for the first time to get the Monuments in Stasis drum mix. In Stasis was kind of a checkpoint for me when it comes to mixing, because after hearing In Stasis, my releases, especially Convergence, was literally based on In Stasis mix, especially drums. For that reason, I am pushing some mid-air and high air on this one just to make the kick a little bit more present, and I really like this sound. And I have it thanks to this one. I will close this one. And next one is gain. It's just, I dropped it 5 decibels because it was too much. It was masking the whole riff and guitars. I didn't like that and I ducked it. Let's hear the kick now. I mean, not just kick, because especially with the Soothe, what you're gonna have is, since this one is side chained, you can only understand it when bass is being played. So I'm going to show you everything except rhythm guitars in the context. Yeah, that's all. And maybe I can also just show you guys soloing drum bass and also the difference in the drum bass. I love Fresh Air. I mean, that was the biggest difference. And the rest is, especially oxide tape helps a lot with the low end. It's fuller, I should say. And with the Soothe, maybe and hopefully this is audible, that bass is a little bit bigger and again, fuller. That's the word I should use. The next one is snare. And with the snare, we have only 2 things. Pro Q4 and another oxide tape. What we have here is a push in the root note of the snare, and I added this. This was what? Spectral, yeah, spectral. I just want to push the overtones a little bit. I pushed it a little bit, like a decibel or so. And I also have this high pass around 45. It's just to get rid of the low end of the kick. That was all. It's not the biggest processing here. as you can see. So let's also hear that. Since there's no side chaining, I will show fast both in the context and the drum bus. It is helping a ton, especially with the Pro Q. It sounds fuller, and it it uses more space, and it sounds bigger. Yeah, that's the word. And with the oxide tape, it's just the analog warmness. I'm not gonna use the buzzwords here, but usually I put the oxide tape or virtual tape machine on snare guitars, but I forgot on this one, at least to check, and in the kick. And depending if I need it or not, I also use that in the bass. On this project, we have that. It's just breaking the digitality and putting some analog warmness. That is, the buzzword added version. The next one is toms. We have Saturn and another oxide tape. Apparently I decided to add it here. And IPS again 7.5. Tom is pretty low end instrument. Each individual tom I'm talking about. And that's why I added this one here. I actually used kick punch preset. This is very interesting. I didn't know. I used that. Probably I set the values after. With the Saturn, there are so many things going on. I set them according to my ear, but explaining will be pretty weird. Since each of them have the warm tape with drive 20, I think it was kind of same for all of them, maybe except this one. Yeah, this one is set to 38.9. Anyway, let's go back to the first one. The mix value is 33.5, so it is not fully affecting, but a little bit of adding warm tape plus a little bit increase in the value. That value meaning volume, sorry. And for next one, I wanted to duck and create some sort of V shape for the toms, and I didn't like the overall sound when I hear it in the mix. So I create two different bands and I check the values for them. And they also have this band values. I could also arguably put them full on a mix, close the drive, and after that set individual levels after. But for some reason I didn't change. I literally don't remember the reason, but I did it this way. Same goes for this one. The values are exactly the same, but I didn't take it too much. And if you are interested in the values, the first crossover was in 240 area. The second one is 527. So this area is where I hate the toms the most. That's why there is a reduction in this area. I usually do that with EQ, by the way. I just do it kind of a V shape. On this one, I just did it with the Saturn. And the last one is the most interesting one because mix is almost 80%. I pushed it almost 5 decibels. It's like adding all the presence and air in the toms. That's why high likely I don't like too much of this ringing and transients on the toms. And what was the last thing? Yeah, the drive is again the same type of saturation, and it is 38.9. So let's hear it. Of course, I need to choose an area where we can hear toms. So let's do it this way. And with Saturn, with the oxide tape, this is making it much bigger. Probably I should have ducked that a little bit. So let's hear in isolation. So yeah, I think I pushed with the oxide tape a little bit, but overall result was pretty good. And I think this is not just the ending point, but where everything should be highest, especially tones are not too much present in the drum programming for this demo. So if I'm using it, I'm gonna pushing it. It's that kind of mentality. Next one is overheads. And with overheads, what we have, let's start from the first one. A Soothe that this preset is from Nolly. It's cymbal smooth, and I didn't change almost anything. I maybe changed depth, and depending if I like it or not, or if it's too harsh or not, I change the processing to soft and increase the depth. So that is usually how I use it, but I don't remember changing anything for this one. The next one is another oxide tape, but I used literally a preset here. That's why it's pretty weird that IPS value is not 15. But yeah, it is not always set in stone rule. And usually these presets, especially when it comes to these very, very, I'm gonna say that, hard to hear kind of plugins. That's why it's always my starting point. And for this one, I didn't change anything, looks like. And the next one is one of my presets again for Soothe. And this is creating space in overheads by listening rhythm guitars. And since rhythm guitars are panned, I am using side processing only. And after that, according to the curve I made, which sounds weird, sorry, looks weird, we have this reduction whenever guitar is hitting. So attack and release as fast as possible. So if I just, maybe I should show that in this area. Not half time in the riff 2, you're gonna hear that whenever guitars are hitting, you're gonna see the push, and after that it will immediately gonna go back. You can hear that right away. I can also increase the release for you, and I will do it now. If I push the release too much to make it slower and slower, cymbals got weaker because the area I cut is not coming back as fast as possible. Usually it's kind of different mentality if you're gonna set release much slower, especially with the Soothe. I always use in the fast settings because I don't want to cut too much from whatever I am listening. Yep, that's Soothe. And next one is a pre-Q. I did a high pass or around 310. I pushed it with spectral around a decibel and another spectral with coming down around 8K, but it's not a big move, I should say, and it's pretty selective actually. Let's hear all of them. I am disabling now. Of course, I'm gonna leave the gain because it is just for leveling. And let's hear it. The first Soothe tamed it, oxide tape pushed it up. The side chained Soothe, according to the guitars, which are pretty heavy, just ducked itself. It was a little bit thinner compared to the disabled version. And with the Pro Q, it's just kind of another smoothing operation, I should say. And the next one is actually bass. So we are completely done with drums. here. So let's continue with the bass. I have these first gains, by the way. It is for setting up the project and creating a lot of space in the faders, especially for mix bus. I don't want to go too much, like around -3, -2, -1. That's why I pushed everything down so that I don't have to do a lot of reduction afterwards. So I start with a lot of headroom. Yeah, that's the word. Let's close this one. The first plugin in the bass processing. Oh, wait. Let's actually start from the bass itself. Yep. I am using Gin Bass here. Don't be fooled by the preset that I am using because this is set to distortion. I think it's loaded as DI, or I accidentally set it as DI. I'm not quite sure. In the mixer, we have kind of 70% drive. If I click, okay, it shows me 3.9 on drive. Tone is set to 5.8. Compressor I didn't touch, I guess, 0.9. I increased it a little bit, I guess. With the girth is 3.3. I think I could put even more because I always program the bass following the rhythm guitars, of course, the rhythm guitars. So they're doing the same thing and they're acting as one instrument in my case. And since I like that too much, I also increase the girth, and together they have this huge crushing heavy sound that I was hoping for, and I did it that way. If I come here, nothing changed, of course, just I changed the tuning. That was all. Of course, Doom is off because I don't want this raw samples here. I could use that if I had a breakdown, but I didn't have that. And humanize is set to human. And position is 0 because I am programming every single string I am playing. That is an important detail. Okay, let's start with bass now. What we have here is a 33 hertz cut. And after that, I pushed the root area, the root note, made it a little bit bigger in the low end part. I created this V shape. This is something that I kind of picked up mostly from Connor Kaminsky's songwriting stream. And I like that, but I didn't want to push it down too much. I'm doing the processing around 250 to 300 to 500 area, and I create some V shape here to reduce. And after that, I tried to use the spectral, and I liked it. I left it as it is. And after that, I want to excite the bass a little bit. I could do the same thing in the tone if I open the contact and change the values in the mixer, but I want to do it with this EQ, and it's again spectral. And last one is a 800 cut, sorry, 8K cut, but I think it's a big move. Usually I don't do that. I think I did it because this is my first demo with Gin Bass, and I think it's too bright and has too much information in this area. That's why it's like it was too much saturated in the high end. That's why I just cut that area. But probably it's not gonna be always the same thing in another instrument, for example. Sorry, in another demo. Probably I can cut 10K area, 12K area, but 8K sounds a little bit harsh, not sure. And this one is the star of the show. Double tap is a 2-stage compressor. So we are compressing the low end first, and after that we are doing the complete compression. So this is a regular compressor that you know, and this is only working for the low end. And I chose the setting as ground. I just push it down completely. EDM is completely off, of course. And after setting the low compression and hearing it, I continue, of course, after leveling the low part, because with the compression I usually have to push it down a little, and after that I did the compression for the overall bass. The next one is the oxide tape, the same stuff, and I even use a preset here. It says Mighty Bass, which sounds pretty cool. I think that's why I used it. And the next one is Soothe. This is again one of my presets that I use on limit because low-end instruments are centered. For that reason, I only worked on the mid processing here, and it is listening for the kick, and whenever we have the kick, it's gonna go down like this. Let me show it to you, at least in the visual, so you can understand how it's working. Yeah, it works like this. You're gonna hear that it's a very, very big difference. I'm gonna close all of these. We have only gain leveling stuff. And after that, probably you will realize that the biggest move is double tap. And the biggest move for the overall context is actually Soothe that I am using, and I just showed it to you. Let's hear it. When we don't have a special double tap in the plugin, the processing chain, kick had a complete space because bass was too much down and too dynamic, and for that reason we heard the kick. At least, I mean, I'm talking about my experience here. If you heard something else, put that in the comment section. And after that, I put the double tap and the whole mix got full because we're also adding a lot of we are compensating what we are compressing. So for that reason, after the compression, we got it up. And oxide tape just made it a little bit fuller on the low end and made it analog. And after that, the Soothe actually recreated the space that I actually take it by processing the bass, especially in the low end area. And this was my goal for bass processing. So let's start with rhythm guitars. I know that some people are wondering about how I set the tone. So I will start with the tone, and after that we will go back how I processed rhythm guitars. Hopefully it will be interesting to you. Left and right is the same, so I will just click on the left one. Dr. Drive is a precision drive plugin, and I strongly recommend for you to use this one because first, this is free, and the second one, it is precision drive. I mean, two amazing things at once happening to you. Just download it, always have it in your arsenal. I'm pretty sure that you're gonna like it. The attack is in the A5. This is helping a ton because when I set the tone or choose my preset in the Gojira, I'm using Archetype Gojira here. I had overdrive on, and I of course don't want two overdrives, just pushing too much here. For that reason, I closed this one and I use precision drive. I did that a couple of times before. I really liked it, and I forgot this move and I just got it back, and it paid off very, very well. You're gonna hear when we are enabling and disabling the tones. And let me close this one for now. I didn't change the brightness, I guess. I pushed the drive a little. Usually it's much less if I'm using this pedal only for the attack. But I'm not doing that anymore, so I increase the drive a little bit, and it's actually boosting and cleaning so much. The next one is just something that I opened already. I push the gate a lot because I need it, and it's not a dynamic thing what I'm doing with this Genti demo. If I had something like that, the gate would be probably even lower, and I would probably automate the gate. And if I had too much Genti chuggy area, I would push the gate all the way -20s, and on a more dynamic areas like playing single chords, chorus sections, for example, I would probably go dial that back, because usually it's not helping all the time. So with the Gojira, what I have is, okay, I cannot talk about the numbers here. So you know the settings. Gain is pretty low, and I always put it low after learning the hard way. If you push the gain too much here, it's not always good for the mixing to tame it. This is a complete project. I recorded everything in this project, also mixed and mastered. Before, I was recording in one project, mixing and mastering in another project. For that reason, it hurt me a ton, and I learned setting the gain lower hard way. And we have tons of bass here. It's like, what is that, 2 to 3 o'clock, I guess. And gain is set to around 9 to 10. And mid is kind of noon. I'll push just a little bit. It's kind of surprising because I usually go down with this, but not too much, I should say. And treble is again 2 to 3. And for master and output is going up, master is going down. It is again kind of surprising because I sometimes reverse them. And presence is pushed again around 2, and depth around 2. It's actually pretty easy to explain. Everything is 2, gain is low. Yeah, something like that. We are not using cap. EQ is coming after the cap, so I'm not going to talk about now. Just wait one more minute. And post effects are completely off because this is a rhythm tone. We don't have any reverb. We don't have any delay, as expected. So, GGD Studio Caps Contenders Round 1. I really didn't have to say all of it, but I still did. This is the biggest window size, I think. I hope you can see it. But I will explain a little bit. I should also come closer with this. So we have this Mar AV cab with SM57, Uber cab with ribbon 121, and 3VM EVH cab with SM7B. Is it 57? Sorry. It's pretty hard to check it from here. It's pretty low. Anyway, brightest on the first one, almost darkest in, and it's -3.5 decibels down for the Uber cap, and finally EVH is 1.8 down and completely bright. Master EQ on. This is how I set the caps. If you want, you can just use the exact same thing. I think it was at first kind of a preset that I got from someone, and I added the EVH cap. I needed a little bit more detail, and I pushed the brightness for that. And finally, for some reason, this is actually a mistake. I have the same gate here, so I can actually close the first gate. I actually shouldn't, but anyway, I have the same gate open here. This is a mistake. Don't do this. I made a huge mistake here, and it turned out well. I'm pretty sure it's not gonna affect too much because everything I play is very short, and it's kind of pushed to the max, especially with my playing and with my attack, but it doesn't change the fact that this gate shouldn't be on. I'm not gonna touch that now. The EQ section is pretty simple actually. I didn't change too much, but We have high pass on 65, low pass on 9.47. For some reason, I was remembering this like 11 to 12K, but I think it was too detailed and saturated, so I must have pushed that a little bit back to 9.5K. I create some space again in this area, and if you want, you can just copy paste. It's not gonna help you at all because this is a tweaking that I did while listening. But I pushed certain areas like 2K and 250 and 125, and I reduced the 500 hertz 4K, and I increased a little bit of 8K. That is all, and it's not much of a big deal, but it helps a ton. Especially high and low pass is the main reason that I have this plugin here after the cap. Otherwise, I could do it somewhere else. And I think I'm double doing it, double passing it. We're gonna check that together. And let's go to low guitars. Low guitars have the exact same precision drive plugin, and we have the same Gojira, but I am not using a separate cap for this one because this is something I learned from Buster. What we have here, I put the fats on, mix is completely full. I pushed it as to the last point, and it made it completely octave down. And after that, we don't have the overdrive, as you can see, because especially this part, what this low guitar does is, let me also open the EQ and talk about it. I'm pushing everything as low as possible. We only have 65 to 125 on. Rest is completely reduced. I also low passed, minimized it. And we also do not allow after 65. So it's a very, very low and small part. And what I do right after that is to set the level. It is -3 at the moment, but we also have another plugin setting it -1.1, so do the math. I'm doing this to provide low end to the guitars and make it more full and sound bigger. That is the reason we have this. You can even just copy paste whatever you have, use an EQ. Of course, don't forget to transpose. And after that, just use the EQ and set the level in a way that these two duplicate guitars and duplicate trackings completely support your main guitars. That is the goal, and it is helping a ton, which you're gonna hear in a bit. Let's actually hear them in isolation rather than the context, because I didn't talk about the rhythm guitar processing yet. Yeah, so it's kind of a studio magic that I have much fuller guitar sound here. So that is kind of all with the guitar tone. And the rest is completely what I did here. So let me open this Pro Q. And again, as you can see, I doubled it. So there's actually even more low and high pass. I'm not gonna call that as a mistake, but it is pretty hard to follow if you're cutting too many different places. I would do the exact same thing that I did with these EQ sections in here and cut even more and probably get a similar result. Of course, the EQ curve is set completely different with the guitar tone, and I was hearing guitar tone only when I was setting the project, and usually high and low cuts are something that I always do with every single instrument, but the levels are changing depending on the instrument's nature, timbre, and range in pitch. So I pushed again the main area 120. It kind of changes depending on what I'm playing. If it's lower tuning, I push it down. If it's higher tuning or a 6 string, I push it a little bit higher. Completely up to me. Again, this area makes muddy. I mean, we also see the exact same thing on the bass. This move is pretty small and it is spectral, but on the bass it was kind of a little bit bigger. And I really like to do that. It gives much more attack. It makes it much clearer. And I always find myself cutting this area in the demos. And I pushed a little bit. I think I didn't want to cut too much, so I pushed a little bit around 400 area. And I excited it a little bit around 6K with 2 decibels. Again, don't copy paste this. It's not going to help you. But it would be really nice if you think about the V cut and see if that is the reason that your guitars sound muddy or not. That could be one reason, but it's totally up to your original guitar tone, how it sounds in the context, and so on. So that's why it is really good if you want to experiment. I totally support that. This Pro MB always doing the exact same thing. Fastest attack, fastest release, around 120. Again, depending on your tuning, it's gonna change. The main area will change. And whenever we are doing muting, it's gonna push it down. So if I play it with every mute, which is, there are a lot of mutes here, you're gonna hear, actually, mute is not the right word. I'm gonna say chug, because chug has this low end. With every mute, we don't have this too much low end happening, but you're gonna hear how it's helping now. There's much more low end if I just turn that off, and that's why I am using it to tame it. I think it's kind of not a secret anymore. It's kind of always must-have move that you are doing, but it's kind of depends if you're gonna do it with dynamic EQ, especially with the Pro Q4, you can do it inside the EQ section. But in my opinion, if you put everything in the same area, it will be much harder to, A/B and test it. That's why sometimes I add multiple EQs, or like in this case, I am changing the movement. And usually Pro MB comes first. On this one, I start by doing the EQ. Interesting. So the next one is Virtual Mix Rack. It's just a preset that I started with Electric Guitar 1. And after that, I set everything off here. And after that, I start listening if it's adding too much or cutting, if it's making it muddy, or adding some details and presence. And I really suggest that, because these presets, especially with the Virtual Mix Rack, professionals are kind of know which gear is used for which instrument. And of course, again, it's gonna make you sound like everyone else. But if you do it like me, reset everything and use your ears, close your eyes, do your best, probably it's gonna help you a ton. And after that, we have this 401 compressor, and I don't remember I changed too much, maybe at all. I just set the value to follow the makeup value that is coming with the preset. So usually, depending on your genre, you're also changing attack and release timing here, and probably it's gonna either tame or add a little bit more bite to your guitars. So the next one is Double Soothe. Let's start with the first one. This is for the ambient guitars, because I know that I have the exact same thing in there, but their processing is a little bit different. With the rhythm guitars, in the mid area, which actually rhythm guitars don't exist too much because I hard pen them, I am doing some smoothing and carving some space for ambient guitars. And it is pretty beneficial, especially considering that my ambient has a lot of shimmer effect. I find pretty useful to cut this area from the guitars, but it's a very small move. It is soft, always high selectivity and sharpness, and attack and release is completely fast. This is kind of my setting always with my sidechain space creation presets. It's kind of weird fancy name, but it helps a lot. The next soothe instance for the snare. Whenever snare hits, we are creating some space, especially where snare's root frequencies are dominant. And with this actually, snare sounds fuller and bigger. And this is what I like. And you can, if you have Soothe or similar plugin that could do the job, you can use something like this. Again, fast attack, fast release. You don't want to have slow release for something like this, especially considering this is a rhythm guitar and we are guitar players. So I think this one completes the rhythm guitar processing. Let's hear it by disabling all of them, and I'm gonna enable them one by one. The biggest change happened with Pro MB to tame the low end and Virtual Mix Virtual Mix Rack. Always forgetting the name. Again, VMR. And Soothe is always good for creating the space. Always. So the next one is clean guitars, and with the clean guitars, what we have is kind of pretty simple. Let's open it. We have Archetype Gojira here. I used one of my demo presets this demo I think is kind of 3 to 5 months old, but I always use the same tricks, so I can explain that. We don't have any pedals in front, not at all. It's except chorus. I have a little bit of chorus here, just a little bit. Mix is also not full, of course. And I'm using the first amp and cap. Bright is on. I push the gain a little bit too much, but it is helping a lot, especially it's pushing with the shimmer effect the saturation, and I really like that. We have a lot of bass. I cut a lot of mid, and we also pushed the treble here. With the cap settings, this is the King's Cap by the name of it. I'm using King's caps. This is Mesa 4x12 with V30s on it, and the right side is not preset, but a blend that Justin did. And on the left, I think this 50 is SM57. I'm not fully sure on that. Can I check it for you? Yeah, I cannot. But I remember it was SM57. So I will continue. I have no high or low pass. I just pushed a little bit on a 125 here, and the real magic is happening here. It is not a ping pong delayed, which is, I always use ping pong. I really like that, but it's not always the good thing here, so I just disabled it. Mix halfway through, and we have just a little bit of tape saturation here, and tape mode is full. It is 1/4 of delay, and the real magic is highly mixed, highly decayed, shimmer, reverb, but the low pass here shows that I cut a lot of information from here, and I really like it. But these tones have another magic, which is a sound design plugin that I recently had the opportunity demo. It is JST. I need to fix my pronunciation. JST X Tension. And this is one of the presets that I did for that demo. It's, I think, the previous episode, so if you are interested in that, you can check that one as well. So I did some filtering. Mix is not the biggest. I widened it a little bit, and length is a lot. So because I know it is kind of hard to understand or hear what am I doing here, let me play the sections for you, because they are doing different stuff and tones are doing the exact same thing, but because of how I use the extension, it sounds different. I'm not gonna go into detail for this because it is the exact same thing as the previous episode. However, I think it's important for you to understand what am I doing here. So left and right playing a dissonant notes, I mean dissonant to each other. So let's hear that isolated. So it started dissonant, and after that you're playing the same thing. Also interesting to me because I thought it was completely dissonant notes, but I forgot. It's been like a week or so I came up with this, so that's why. Riff 1 is actually another clean guitar. Let's check together if I use something else. No, it is exactly the same plugin with a bit of compression. I used Apple's own compressor. This is fat type compression with soft distortion. So we have also some saturation in it. I remember is pushing. So that's what I play. It's nothing fancy. And for JSD extension, I am using the exact same thing. And this is the last guitar section, I mean clean section, and it has, let me check, the exact same thing, but I changed the length value, mix value, depending on how I feel like it, and the tone exactly different. I used Silvera Solo from Neural DSP's own presets, and I think I changed it a little bit. So these are the settings if you're interested. This is actually another clean tone. I'm not quite sure why I named it that way, but it is what it is. This is the third amp and third cap. Noon gain, noon bass, noon bass, close to noon mid, a little bit higher on treble like 2 to 3 o'clock, and we have a bit of presence and a lot of depth. And for the cap we have 57 and ribbon 121. And I remember I didn't change anything here, and I think I cut a little bit here. No, actually it's completely off, so I probably do after EQ. Interesting. I must have closed this one. Maybe that's the change I made with the preset, but I'm not gonna change and see that to change project. Again, we have some delay and reverb, but it is not shimmer. That's the biggest detail. Let's hear it together. And yeah, that was about it. Let's talk about the clean guitar processing, which is a sidechain to guitar thingy. I did a lot of cuts because I didn't want rhythm guitars to be affected. I pushed a little bit up, but I ducked it down with spectral around 400. The similar thing happened in 2K, but I pushed it upward with spectral, and I have a little bit more presence. And I cut around 18K and above, of course. And we have virtual mix rack. acoustic guitar shimmery preset, I kind of reset everything again, and I set it myself by listening. I remember I again matched the whole thing with the 401 compression, and I didn't change anything regarding attack or release here. And I added a bit of thickness and a lot of shimmer. And finally, we have the Soothe that is doing a lot of job. It listens to rhythm guitar and it cuts. Again, a bit of selective, a bit of sharp and soft settings. I am not doing high selectivity or something like that, because with the shimmer and with my attack on the pick, especially clean and lead sections, I always find myself cutting and smoothing out with Soothe. For that reason, soft is a much better settings, and I'm not pushing selectivity. And I'm doing the exact same thing only here with the guitars, so they have their own spaces in the mix. And Soothe kind of makes sure that it is doing that only when there is another instrument that is being listened. So if there's no rhythm guitar played, we don't have any reduction here. So we will have a complete space and we are not gonna duck anything. That's why I love and I like and I use always Soothe. So let's do the A-B together. What I like about the virtual mix rack, in the EQ section, the Pultaki EQ, I push it a lot, and after that I do the compression. Compression is set to this halftime area because this is the biggest change that I have. I push the guitars, I push the clean guitars. If you check the automation, I have a lot of automation in the clean guitars. I create space here, but that compression is always affecting, and this automation works after that. So there's always pushed, tamed, less dynamic clean guitars in the works. And same goes for the guitars, not low frequency, but yeah, the real guitars. The real guitars. In the rhythm guitars, it starts as 0. I start by, everything is kind of leveled. I push certain areas where I have the harmonics and the, again, that's also harmonic. That's a pinch harmonic, yeah. Pinch harmonics and just, the regular harmonics, fret harmonics, whatever. In front of the camera, I speak even worse English, so don't mind me. But I have a little bit more push in this riff 2, which is area. And halftime is again pushed a little bit compared to the first riff, because that is where I am kind of ending the whole thing, and that's why I have that. So I have automations here and there, don't forget that. That is pretty important, actually maybe the most important thing, because if you are happy with your tone and all, sometimes you need to create more space, less space, change the dynamics, and automation always helping that. As you can see, I also automated the drums here, and not just that, I have automation in the kick and toms as well. So yeah, please don't think that there is no automation. We have that. Let's talk about leads here. With the leads, I used archetype Noli. Of course, I love the guy. I love the whole suite that he and of course very talented Neural DSP team brought up. This is the 4th amp and cab. I am not using any other amp because if you didn't see yet, we have another extension, and sometimes setting the tones, especially for this wet ambient drone kind of sounds, always not the best thing, because it's gonna be heavily reverbed, heavily delayed in the context. And if I change this to the third amp or another suite, of course the tone will change, but the end result, which is that drone heavily reverbed guitar, it's gonna be pretty similar, and its goal is gonna be the same. But for that reason, I push the gain a little bit more to have the amp saturation. I allow how I can control the saturation through the simulated amp preamp, and it helps a lot when I'm setting these lead sounds, including that heavy reverb. Sometimes I just need a little bit more, and I'm not adding the saturation outside with another plugin. I just push gain here or go back to the overdrive settings here. But this is pretty simple. We have a smooth compression set. This is Sublime Lead. I think this is Nolly's preset. I'm not quite sure. Looks like I changed something, but I do not remember actually. Maybe the EQ, maybe something else. But yeah, we have no reverb. You know why, because I am adding outside. Actually, extension is a delay plugin, but it is working in a very different way, and it is adding the delayed version to itself. So for that reason, it's a little bit more smooth. Especially, it creates a really wet reverb. For that reason, it is helping a lot. And that's why we don't have the reverb here at all. And we have, again, 3 different tracks for the leads. It is doing the exact same thing. If you want to hear it in the context, let me show you all of them one by one. But I don't remember if I changed anything. I just copy pasted all of the tracks and played different areas. Sometimes even copy paste from the clean guitars, because that tremolo motion, I really like that. And when I put the extension, I can still hear the attack, and it is creating some sort of tension. And the reverb and the whole sound design part of it, it is helping me to create this ambient, very wet theme in this demo. So yeah, I will play you the first part. Not the best performance. But yeah, if the timings are right, yeah. The second part, let's play it. And the third part, which is the halftime area. I really like that peak sound here, kind of scratching small and creating some sort of rhythm that is also participating to the whole demo. I really like that. And let's talk about the lead processing. We have a compressor, fat type, distortion is set to soft, and mix is 88%. And it is, let me check again by clicking here. Not the biggest move actually, but it is helping, especially with the soft saturation, and it is also taming the whole leads a little bit. It's not doing the best job here, but on the riff 2 area, which is I should name them better so I can actually refer them. Mental point. And we have auto release, just a small point. And let's continue. We have this Pro Q. Again, I think it's like a not like but an exact copy paste from clean. I think I changed the amp after not recreating, duplicating the cleans. So it is doing the exact same thing. So flow is not so different at all. I still have the acoustic guitar shimmery because I have this exact same idea in mind to match both cleans and leads together. The difference for me is, even though they are playing the exact same thing, the lead is more saturated, lead tone, I mean real lead tone, and clean is something that have a clean context in the amp but has a shimmer. So it is providing the high end here. That is the goal. So it must have been either the exact same thing or I moved it a little bit. But yeah, always trust your ears on this one. If it was weird and bad, I would change it. And the next one is, again, the same preset. That name is probably should change because it says clean space for guitars. No, this is ambient or something else. But it is doing the exact same thing in guitar's own context, own area, own range. I'm creating space, and I'm doing it by listening to rhythm guitars, and I'm just ducking the areas in a soft setting with 4.2 sharpness and 5.3 selectivity. Nothing complex. And we have final EQ, which is pushing a shelf around 2.8K, and I controlled it around 2500. Nope, it's not called 2500, that's 2500. Sorry, around 25,000. Sorry. Yeah, 2500 to 25,000. Anyway, and it is just to control this area. I didn't want to add too much brightness. That was the reason. And let's turn off all of them. And I want to show it in the halftime section, or actually riff one, because this is the part where you hear too much, or always. I mean, in other isolated contexts, I always played this part, so maybe it's gonna be helpful. Leads are dominant around 4K, and that's pro Q move. Probably I didn't feel it's not doing too much, and I didn't want to push it, but EQ it. For that reason, the last pro Q did the biggest job here. The rest must have been same or similar with what I thought on clean guitar processing. And finally, even though it's not the biggest thing, it is helping a ton. And if you have samples, impacts, risers, whatever, it has always been helpful. For that reason, I strongly suggest that in your demos, use them. And sometimes the biggest move that you do to get a heavy sound is not coming from your guitars or bass processing or your complete mix. It helps a ton, by the way. But adding these impacts helping a lot. So we're gonna talk about that. I just want to play them individually, but let's start with all of them kind of together. So they're adding a lot of nice, cool stuff. And I got them from Splice. and I processed them. It's not the biggest processing in the world, but still. This particular one has, again, extension, because sometimes the tail that I have from this impacts is not enough. For that reason, I add it, and it also adds a really nice timbre. I like that, and that's why I used it. And before that, we have an EQ. If there's too much high frequency context, I don't like it usually, especially with the risers. I hate it. It's like a whistle, and I don't like it. So for that reason, I just cut it out. And it sounds like this without and with. The original sample is great, but it has too much information that I don't want to use. We have this impact low. I really like it, but I still cut the same area. So consider it me taming that. We have this riser. With and without, not a big change, but it is still helping me to cut the certain areas. Let me check what I did. I didn't actually cut too much high end there. I even added some in the mid and high mids, and I cut. Can I click this area? Okay, there's actually a big cut first, but I increased right after to compensate in the 2K area and 1K area. Right? No, just 2K area. This is not doing anything, but this is a big move, so overall EQ is a little bit different. And let me check if I processed anything else. Oh, okay, this one. This is the outro section. I did this because let me show actually the move first. I cut this area. It was a little bit too much for me, but I'm not quite sure if I would do the exact same thing if I was mixing right now, because these are happening in the outro, and I seriously need that we don't need these cuts. But let's hear it, and maybe I can change my mind again. Nope, I did a good thing. I did a good thing, but it is not hurting, actually. I must have probably checked that and copy pasted also in the second sample, which sounds like this. Pretty cool. They're also transposed, by the way, because they're for another key. It is also taming. I think I really use these guys for completely low end and kind of ultra purpose. So yeah, and they're completely blended and matched in timing with the samples, the other samples, my impacts. So overall sound is pretty cool. Yeah, and that was the layers for FX. So you know everything now. There are no secrets, and there are a lot of decisions that I made from my previous demos, my previous experience, and watching a lot of tutorials and copy pasting a lot of settings from Noli. I'm doing djent. I know djent stuff. I know djent mixing. I got a lot of stuff from the videos that I was watching. I know why I use them, and since I have the exact same context, I didn't change too much stuff. Do I suggest the same thing? Yes, if you know the context, by all means just get all these parameters and use them as much as you want. But please understand that why you're using a certain thing, that's compressor. What's that compressor doing? What is the reason? That's the important part. Same goes for the equalization, same goes for saturation. Why I'm not completely saturating master bus, why is that a stupid idea? And so many different things should come to your mind, and you should do some experimentation with that, and after that you should decide on what you need to use for a certain mix and certain demo or a song. And your ears don't lie to you unless you're hearing the exact same mix for hours. If that's the case, not case, of course, it's the case, please just listen, give yourself a couple of hours. Coming to this version, I changed like 4, 5, maybe 6 versions. Sometimes snare was too much for me. Sometimes snare had too much attack and brightness. Sometimes it was guitar too low. Sometimes it was bass is not pushed enough and supporting me. So me being the rhythm guitar part, of course. For that reason, I just suggest checking out also my previous episodes and a lot of mixing videos if you're kind of new to this, and if you already know about mixing, hopefully this will be another perspective to you, and hopefully there is something you can actually kind of take, not as a lesson but as a perspective, of course. So yeah, that's about it. Just check the other videos as well. It would be really nice if you can like and subscribe and turn on notification bell. It would be really nice. I totally appreciate every single engagement you guys do, and I really like reading the comments. So please comment down below, what is your experience with this video? Did you like the mix? And is there anything you didn't know or experimented on yet with the guitar tones maybe, or the buster trick, or the drum mixing, or maybe you never use turbo, or you're always doing turbo but not changing anything and trusting completely nollie, which I would do the same, but I know what I'm adding. So yeah, that's the small difference that I have. So yeah, thank you so much, and hopefully I will do my best to come up with interesting stuff. If you're interested in bass programming, I can make a video about that. I had some questions coming to me about drum processing and drum programming and I can also talk about drum programming, maybe not for this demo but my other demos, because these drums were coming from a company that asked me to make the demo, and I changed the kick patterns completely, I changed the feels completely, and I changed, I guess, a couple of areas, but beside that, everything as they provided. So if you want to check it, the company name is Drum Now, so that's something that maybe you can use if you don't know drum programming, but I will explain it hopefully in the next videos. If you're interested, comment down below. Thank you so much for reserving your time and focus for this video, and I hope to see you on the next one.